And coming in number 5, the Pasetto family possession. During the year of 1981, home in Lee, Massachusetts, was riddled by paranormal activity that surged through every room in this house. Louis and Dale Pasetto, an average hardworking American couple, along with their 2 children, endured occurrences that nearly destroyed them, literally. The devout Catholics lived peacefully in the house that had been their family home for decades. It wasn't until 2 years after moving in that the demonic signs started showing. On March 19th, Mrs. Pasetto began receiving nightly visits from a white orb that took the shape of a non-threatening young boy who spoke in a very soft voice. Doesn't sound that bad. While the apparition was gentle, the Pasettos felt that they should rid their home of such supernatural entity, and a priest eventually came in to perform a ritual. Mr. and Mrs. Pasetto believed their troubles were over after this, but unfortunately, this only caused more demonic occurrences to start. In place of the sweet ghost boy grew an unearthly creature hunched over and dressed in a black robe. Scary. Mrs. Pasetto claimed that the specter would say vulgar and nasty things, growling, saying it called itself the Minister of God. It wasn't just the verbal attacks that were happening, however, no. During the sleepless nights, Mrs. Pasetto claimed that she suffered claw marks both on her back, stomach, breasts, and face after being dragged around the bedroom. Mr. Pasetto attests to this and said that he watched in horror as the bed levitated above him, Mrs. Pasetto on it. Terrifying, dude. Refrigerators were ripped from walls, metal bookcases turned over to the floor, and in one case, a crucifix was even yanked from the hand of their 14-year-old son. The Pasettos reached out to medical professionals for help, but they rejected their experiences, calling them exaggerated. It wasn't until Mr. and Mrs. Pasetto turned to professionals Ed and Lorraine Warren, self-proclaimed demonologists, that were called to help. The Ghostbusters themselves. As the founders of the New England Society for Psychic Research in the 50s, Mr. and Mrs. Warren devoted their life to the supernatural. When the Warrens visited the Pasettos, they instantly detected signs of paranormal activity pulsing from the home. In a description eerily similar to the film Poltergeist, which came out the following summer in '82, Mrs. Warren says that she saw many small ghost lights move around the room until they combined to create a towering, shadowy figure. A priest was brought in to perform the ritual. The basement apparently then filled with smoke during the exorcism, and when the ritual was complete, the Warrens deemed the house clear of evil. The Pasetto family moved back in and reported no further activity since. And in 2004, the family moved out and on and left this once haunted house for someone else to deal with. I understand. Number 4, Elizabeth Knapp. The possession of Elizabeth Knapp, October 30th, 1671 to January 12th, 1672, is a unique and weird one in the aspect that it was approached from a more scientific aspect than religious, and being of that time, somewhat of a new methodology. Knapp's father was the servant at a household of Samuel Willard, a prominent reverend in the Church of Groton. When Elizabeth Knapp, a member of his own household, began to show signs of demonic possession, Willard took a carefully and yet scientific approach to the situation, which was rare for the 17th century Puritan. After these scary events took place, they could provide no explanation for her episodic fits. He declared that it was a case of possession. Throughout the entire process, he notes in his journal, Knapp seemed to have most violent fits when Willard was present beside her. Willard states that Knapp at first began to complain of pains in her body. She would grab certain parts of her body such as her legs or breasts and would scream out, talking about feelings of strangulation. She would even sometimes laugh to the point of hysterical fits, weeping or screaming out. Hallucinations followed shortly after the outbursts, and on many occasions she claimed to see 2 people constantly walking around her bed. Strange claims like this constantly seeing men floating above her bed as well. This happened particularly at night, including some convulsings on the ground. Willard then documented on the night of November 2nd, 1671, Knapp made a confession of meeting up with the devil. Uh-oh. The old sign at the crossroads deal, huh? She stated that for 3 years the devil had been meeting her, promising her money, youth, and the ability to see the world. She then claimed that he had presented her with a book of blood covenant, which was signed by other women as well. And on the night of November 28th, in which she had a fit lasting for 48 hours straight, she was in a coma state until she made the pact with the devil himself. Witnesses document strange, deep voices and animal sounds coming from her. After Willard stopped entries to his journal, things get a little messy. It has been a historical mystery what happened to Knapp, as we are still unsure to this day exactly what remained of her. Was she tried and hanged for witchcraft, or simply disappeared on the promise of seeing the world? You tell me. Number 3, like father, like son. Duxbury, Massachusetts. 2021, huh? A 19-year-old man is charged in the death of his father. Apparently the boy told police that he was baptizing his father at a Massachusetts pond to exorcise out his demons. Okay, modern times call for modern solutions, I guess. And this one, a modern weird one. Jack Callahan, the 19-year-old kid, choked back tears in court as he listened to prosecutors describe the moment divers pulled the bloated body of his father, 57-year-old Scott Callahan, from a Massachusetts pond, lifeless. The young man told investigators that he and his father went to the pond around midnight after he picked up his father from a Boston bar. He says that his mother did not want the intoxicated ex-husband of the family home that night as he had been acting somewhat strange lately. After conversations from the son and father, Jack, feeling helpless and confused about his situation, tried to take matters into his own hands. He is now facing a murder charge in relation to his father's death and is still under investigation. Both the prosecution and defense say Scott Callahan had a long history of substance abuse and suffered from the aftermath of traumatic brain injuries, and that from overuse of medicinal drugs might have taken the man's mind. According to Jack at the pond, his father became combative with him, punched him repeatedly in the face, claiming that he had not been in control of his own body, and was assured that his father wasn't really aware of what he was doing in the moment. The 19-year-old then decided to baptize his father in an attempt to exorcise the demon, which resulted in drowning him. That's a hard one to swallow. It's also got some biblical feel to it, you know? Father, son, bonding over paranoia. Scott Callahan was found in the water about 50 feet away from the shore in the pond, short time after the baptism and attempted exorcism happened. He was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. There is an open investigation on this one still, and the young man is sticking to his story. What do you think? Possession? Number 2, Warren, Massachusetts. This New England tragedy was apparently what laid out the structure of the Conjuring movies. I'm terrified just reading that, and I guess we're gonna find out why. 11-year-old David Glatzel was only 10 when he reported beginning having hallucinations and delusions. From around 79 to 82, the boy's suffering worsened, causing severe trauma in the family. According to his family, efforts by Catholic priests and others to relieve the boy of what they said were multiple demonic possessions. Multiple. Things started getting interesting, however, surrounding the family after an aggressive, bloody confrontation in 1981. Arn Johnson, boyfriend of David's older sister, Deborah, stabbed his landlord to death multiple times in Brookfield. New England paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren later claimed that Johnson had actually challenged the demon inside David's body to leave the young boy and enter him instead. This guy's a hero, man. Unfortunately, a deadly one at that. That argument was the basis of the devil made me do it defense at Johnson's trial in Danbury with the Superior Court. The Warrens claimed that the man showed all signs of possession, including growling, speaking in strange voices, violent acts, and talkings of the beast. This is a wild case and sparked huge controversy in court after murder charges were forever changed with the claim that the devil made me do it would be lawfully excused. He was released from prison in 1985. And coming in at number 1, the Dover Demon. Probably the most famous of all these cases. 17-year-old William Bartlett claimed that while driving on April 21st, 1977, he saw a large-eyed creature with huge sharp fingers and glowing eyes on top of a broken stone wall on Farm Street in Dover, Massachusetts. 15-year-old John Baxter reported seeing a similar creature on Miller Hill Road the same evening. Another 15-year-old, Abby Brabham, claimed to have seen the creature the following night on Springdale Avenue. 3 in 1 night, huh? The teenagers all drew sketches of the alleged creature. Bartlett wrote on his sketch, "I, Bill Bartlett, swear on a stack of Bibles that I saw this creature." And according to the Boston Globe, some suggest that the creature may have just been a large foal or moose calf. Nah, definitely not. With wings and fingers like that, I don't think so. Police told the Associated Press that creatures reported by the teenagers were probably nothing more than a school vacation hoax. I don't know. It's been about 45 years since the sightings of the creature that came to be known as the Dover Demon, and still remains one of Massachusetts' truly great mysteries and one of the world's great cryptid cases.
Number 5 on this list is the Basilisk. The basilisk is a beast in Italian folklore that is said to annoy the living hell out of the villagers it's nearby. Bestiarium says, in the Val Carmonica, a valley in the central Italian Alps region, there is a local celebration which is connected to a legend about a mythical monster. This monster is the basilisk, a creature with a huge head and large mouth, adorned with 2 tiny horns and 2 brightly glowing eyes. According to the local legend, the terrible basilisk lived in the woods in Andrista, a small village. Actually, terrible is an overstatement. It did little harm, but it did constantly annoy the locals. As punishment, the beast was captured as the locals used a beautiful girl as bait to trap and capture the lusty beast. It was fought by a hunchbacked folk hero. So they hold a festival for the demon thing every year. There's a parade and they get a costume for it made from goat skin. The whole village participates in it and it's a whole big affair that's going on. However, there are a few select elders who don't participate. Whilst everyone is out and about having fun, drinking, and making merry, this select group of elders is inside being very careful with what they do. Apparently, this group was around when this beast first came to being. They saw it firsthand, and they don't agree with the way that people are treating it. In their opinion, the legend has been thoroughly exaggerated, and this creature isn't as kind as everyone wants to believe. They are under the impression that constantly doing this year in and year out is going to anger the creature, and one year it will finally unleash its wrath upon the village. Now, no one knows if this is true or not, or if it's just a bunch of people being really paranoid. However, I would tend to believe the people who claim to have seen this thing firsthand, rather than those who are just looking for an excuse to get drunk. Number 4 on this list is Stryzga. This is a demon very similar to a vampire that can be found in parts of Italy. Wikipedia says a Stryzga is a usually female demon somewhat similar to vampires in Slavic and especially Polish folklore. People who were born with 2 hearts and 2 souls and 2 sets of teeth, the second one barely visible, were believed to be Stryzgi. Somnambulics, or people without armpit hair, could also be seen as one. Furthermore, a newborn child with already developed teeth was also believed to be one. When a person was identified as a Stryzga, they were chased away from human dwelling places. During epidemics, people were getting buried alive, and those who managed to get out of their graves, often weak, ill, and with mutilated hands, were said to be Stryzgi by others. It is said that Stryzgi usually died at a young age, but according to belief, only one of their 2 souls would pass to the afterlife. The other soul was believed to cause the deceased Stryzga to come back to life and prey upon living beings. These undead creatures were believed to fly at night in a form of an owl and attack nighttime travelers and people who had wandered off into the woods at night, sucking out their blood and eating their insides. Stryzga were also believed to be satisfied with animal blood for a short period of time. Whatever version of the Stryzga is proven to be correct, it really isn't good either way. They're either personally coming to kill and suck your blood, or they're indicating that we're about to die. The way that you protect yourself is pretty similar to vampires. Burning the body of one of these creatures or putting a stake through it are proven methods of getting rid of them. Also, for some reason, slapping it across the face with your left hand is said to help. Not sure if I want to be the one trying that method though. Number 3 on this list is dragons. Now, I know that dragons aren't technically demons, but they are pretty bloody terrifying in my opinion, and for that reason I think they deserve some love on this list. Italy has quite the history with dragons and has had some pretty big ones in the past. Dragon's Wish says, one of the most famous dragons of Italian folklore is Tyrus, a wyvern that besieged Terni in the Middle Ages. One day, a young and brave knight of the noble house of Cittadini, tired of witnessing the death of his fellow citizens and depopulation of Terni, faced the dragon and killed him. The town, from that day onwards, adopted the dragon in its coat of arms, and accompanied by a Latin inscription, Tyrus e annis dederent signa terraminis, that stands under the banner of the town of Terni, honoring this legend. This is just the most famous legend of a dragon in Italy, but it doesn't mean that it's the only one. There have been other reports of dragons in Italy as well, and some of them have been very scary. At the end of the day, a dragon, in my opinion, is just as bad, if not worse, than a demon. If I had to go one-on-one versus a dragon or a demon, I might try my luck with the demon, guys, because there's no way I'm going to be able to survive the dragon. Number 2 on this list is the Lariosoro. This creature is an evil serpent living in one of Italy's big bodies of water, and it's said to be a servant of the devil. Yoea writes, "Meet l'Ariosoro, Italy's own Loch Ness monster." According to Italian folklore, l'Ariosoro lives in Lake Como, which lies 30 miles to the north of Milan and is one of the deepest European lakes. In November 1946, 2 hunters claimed that they saw a huge animal resembling a reptile swimming in the lake. It had red scales and was about 12 meters in length. Upon firing their rifles, Italy's Nessie disappeared into the center of the lake with a hissing sound. The creature was named after Lariosaurus balsami, a prehistoric reptile whose fossilized remains were discovered in the lake in 1830. More sightings followed at the lake. In 1954, a creature with a round muzzle and webbed paws was spotted by a father and his son. Then, in August 1957, another monster was allegedly seen by natives. A month later, in the same year, an animal was spotted in the lake, this time whose head resembled that of a crocodile. The last sighting was in 2003, and it looked more like a giant eel. It's got tons of different forms, and no one knows exactly what form it will show up as next. One thing is clear though, it's guarding whatever is at the bottom of this lake. Some people think that the devil has some type of gate there, or that he's working on creating a gate. Until the gate is fully functional and ready to bring creatures from hell to our world, the devil has employed the capabilities of this underwater beast to guard it. This is all just a theory, but no one knows for sure, so we should probably do some digging pretty soon, folks, and figure out what's going on underneath the water. And number 1 on this list is the ferocious beast. I wish I had a more descriptive name for you guys, but that is literally what it has been called. The ferocious beast. This is a demon creature that resembled a wolf and was around several hundred years ago. An enormous animal similar to a wolf, it ate pets and children and terrorized Milan during the 1790s, and the Milanese organized a hunt against it. After months, they killed the ferocious beast and displayed its body at the university at Pavia, but it's no longer there and has been missing for decades. Informal sources claim it was stolen, destroyed during World War II, or removed specifically by German actions during that war. So there are a lot of rumors that have circulated about what actually happened to this beast, but something that wasn't brought up there was that it still might be alive. Yes, it was killed back in the day, but now with this pelt mysteriously vanishing, people are thinking that this thing could have come back to life. Now this would have been with the help of the devil himself. The legend says that the devil realized how deadly this beast was to us humans. He saw some serious potential here and didn't want to let it go to waste. So he finally decided to come back and claim the pelt and then bring this thing back to life, but as a servant of the devil. Now its main goal is to serve as a demonic hellhound and claim as many bodies as it can before it's killed once again. Although killing it a second time is going to be a lot harder, considering now it has demonic abilities to go along with it. Number 5 on this list is El Coco. El Coco is a demon that is said to specifically go after children living in South America. This is a story that is told to children all over the continent to ensure that they go to sleep when they're supposed to. Villains Wiki says, Coco is a monster who exists to enforce taboos and ensure that children sleep when told. For should children disobey orders to sleep, Coco is said to hunt them down and may inflict a number of gruesome punishments upon them depending on the story. Usually he's said to eat the children or spirit them away, never to be seen again. Coco may also emerge as a female known as La Coca. The two beings are seen as extensions of the same monster, and as such the Coca is little more than Coco taking a female guise, and vice versa. Both share the exact same motives and terrible behaviors. While a force of punishment, Coco is also an opportunist and is said to outright kidnap and devour any disobedient he can find. This is seen as further proof that children should mind their manners and always obey their elders in case a lurking Coco happens upon them misbehaving and captures them for a nightmarish fate. El Coco, El Coca, really doesn't matter which one you get because they're both gonna destroy you if you're a and you disobey your parents. Now, this is probably just a story told by parents to frighten their children into doing what they want them to do. But if there is some legitimacy to this, then this is by far one of the worst demons in South America. To kidnap and kill little for not going to sleep when they're supposed to is pretty horrible. If I was a kid and I heard this story, I'd be so scared to go to sleep on time that I probably wouldn't be able to fall asleep on time. Thank goodness I grew up in North America and didn't have to deal with El Coco. Number 4 on this list is La Viudita. This demon is specifically out here hunting for the men. Max Gax writes, this is a common tale across Latin America, including Argentina. La Viudita is known as the Black Widow. She's said to be a beautiful woman, veiled and dressed in black from head to toe, who walks in the streets after midnight. She tries to get drunk men to her house. If she succeeds, it's then and only then that she will take off her veil to reveal that her face is nothing more than the grotesque skull. The sight is said to be so horrific that the men are quite literally scared to death as the woman lets out a shriek of hair-raising laughter. For those that survive, they awake at dawn, usually lying in a puddle or covered by thistles and swearing to never party until late again. Let me tell you guys, I am the type of individual who likes to go out. In fact, I do it most weekends. If I was several beverages deep and some pretty lady takes her face off, that's it folks, I'm done. There is literally no more Nicholas Playlog after that. I have no idea why this demon does what it does, but it means that every Argentinian gentleman had better be on the watch for something like this when it flips over to 2 AM at the club. Also, no one has any idea what the thistles are doing there or why you're covered in a puddle. So clearly something pretty terrible happens after you pass out with this demon as well. Probably something that I don't even want to know about. Number 3 on this list is La Cocana. La Cocana, believe it or not, is a barn animal. Yeah, we're looking at a demon who is literally a barn animal here, folks. Pepe's Chile writes, in this Chilean legend, a woman deceived her family by being a housewife during the day and a witch at night. She would use potions to turn herself into various animals and play while her family slept, then use another potion to turn herself back into a human when morning came. One night, she forgot to make sure the children were asleep and they saw her turn into a sheep. As she ran off to play, the children wanted to imitate her and turn themselves into foxes. When they couldn't turn back into children, their cries woke their father. Seeing what had happened, the father threw all the potions into the river in a rage. When the wife came home, she couldn't turn herself back into a human and was doomed to remain a sheep forever. So you're probably thinking to yourself, great, the witch is no more, she's a barn animal now, what can she even do? Well, it's believed that this demon, goat, witch woman is the worst omen that you can see in South America. Sheep are a pretty common animal, but if you happen to set eyes upon this particular sheep, then horrible luck will befall you and your loved ones. Terrible tragedies that you can't even imagine or don't even want to begin to think about. So, how are you going to know that you've seen this sheep when there are so many others in South America? Apparently, you're gonna just know. Every demonic encounter that I've read about talks of people feeling that horrible sense of foreboding and a terrible presence. Apparently, something similar happens here. Time slows, and as you make eye contact with that demonic barn animal, you know that something horrible is about to happen. There's really nothing you can do to avoid this one, it's just sort of luck of the draw. Hopefully, La Cocana doesn't pick you. Number 2 on this list is Bestafera. Bestafera is absolutely deadly, guys, and one of the most visually striking demons on this list. TV Tropes writes, Bestafera, translated to bestial beast, the Bestafera is a horse with a human torso, believed to either be a servant of or the devil himself, who leaves hell through cemeteries during full moon nights to brand people with his mark, which dooms them to hell. Some legends say that instead of marking people, its sight causes them to go insane, but only for a few days. It's also said that it roams forest areas in search of a blood-soaked red flower, and that when he finds it, he disappears. Blood-soaked red flower. No idea what that is, and I don't think I even really want to know either, guys. This is not the creature that you want to run into if you're chilling in South America. This may even be the devil himself for all we know. Artists' renditions of this creature are truly terrifying, and we don't actually have any photographs of the beast because anyone who gets close to it doesn't make it out alive. Stay away from Vestifera at all costs. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Waikifu. The Waikifu is a horrible demon that you can find in Argentina. Maxgax writes, this legend comes from the Mapuche people of Argentina and Chile. According to them, the Waikifu is a harmful spirit or demon. When they were introduced to Christianity, the Waikifu were said to inhabit people as well as being free-form spirits. They can alternate between a human and an animal form too. They're aimed to enslave the souls of the dead, and they take great pleasure in spreading diseases and killing people. They were said to come from the west and had no soul. They were said to enter our world as a consequence of battles with the Pilan spirits, which resulted in the destruction of the perfect harmony of the world. They have the power to capture and enslave the spirits of the recently dead if it is reluctant to leave the body and transform into a greater spirit. If they do manage to trap a spirit in this way, they can use them to hurt other people. In this way, the Waikifu have feared entities. Not only can they enslave your soul and rob you of an afterlife, they can use you to hurt others, perhaps even your own family and friends, and many feel this fate is truly worse than death. Now, what I want to know, folks, and I don't think there's any way to find this out without getting enslaved, but what does it feel like to be under their control? Are you aware that you're under their control? Do you recognize the actions that you're doing when you do them, or are you just a mindless dummy who's a shell of your former self? Personally, if I ever was to get attacked by one of these things, I would prefer the latter. If this demon forced me to kill or harm my family and loved ones, and I was aware of what I was doing, then yeah, that is way worse than death. Trapped in your own mental prison, having to watch as you hurt the ones that you care about, it's no wonder this demon is so feared in Argentina and why the locals have tried to do everything they can to avoid it. Number 5 on this list is Der Grossman. This demon is very similar to Slenderman and is just as dangerous. Slenderman Wiki says, it is a supposed mythical creature associated with woodcuts carved by an unknown artist in the 16th century Germany. Said woodcuts portrayed it as a tall, disfigured man with white spheres where his eyes should be, similar in appearance to the Slenderman. Der Grossman was commonly described as a fairy of the Black Forest who abducted bad children that entered the forest at night and would stalk them until they confessed their wrongdoings to a parent. The appearance of this demonic creature makes people believe that it could be related to Slenderman in some fashion, like a dark and twisted cousin or something like that. However, it seems as if Der Grossman is only native to Germany, or at least the forests there are the only ones where reported sightings have been. Be very careful if you end up walking around in a German forest by yourself. Number 4 on this list is the Werewolf of Moorbach. Just that name, the Werewolf of Moorbach, sounds super menacing, like a scary creature out of Lord of the Rings or something like that. This is no fantasy fiction though, this is a real legend. Europe Diaries says, a soldier running away from the Russian army with some other deserters stopped at Wittlich on his way to Alsace, his home. They wanted to grab some requirements from a farmhouse they spotted, but ended up killing the farmer and his sons on getting caught. The farmer's wife is said to have cursed the soldier so he would turn into a beast every full moon. Eventually, the news spread of a violent beast and the folks of Moorbach were successful in killing him later. A candle burnt always at the spot where he was buried as a reminder and warning. However, one night in 1988, the candle went out and the officers at the US Air Base at Moorbach apparently saw a huge wolf-like figure within the perimeter. A chase followed, but the military dogs were not successful in combating the creature. The candle was relit after the incident, and the story was recounted numerous times since then. Now, how much of it was true and how much of it was imagined? It might as well have been the imagination of the 3 security officers at the airbase, probably bored or in need to tell a new story. But then again, some of the other officers apparently years later insisted that what they saw was true. This is the big story that everybody always thinks about when referring to the Moorbach werewolf, but there have been other sightings since this incident as well. People have even found the carcasses of dead animals that have been absolutely ravaged lying in the forest. Now, these animal carcasses could have just as easily been caused by an actual wolf or a bear or something, but considering the frequent sightings of this werewolf, it's fair to wonder. The candle apparently still burns at Moorbach, and while it's lit, the people believe that we should still be protected. But if it ever does go out, then be very careful of the Moorbach werewolf. Number 3 on this list is the changeling. This demon, or demons in this case, is very strange in the way that they can attack. Typically their targets are mothers of newborn babies or the babies themselves. It all started from an ancient legend in Germany where the mother of a newborn baby realized her child would not grow or gain weight. Both of the parents were very worried and looked for ways to help. They heard of this magical spring where, if they dunk their baby in it, it will either heal their child or their child will die within 9 days. Considering their child would die anyways if its growth was continued to be stunted, they really had no other choice than to try the water and hope that it healed their baby. The mother left with her child, but while she was walking to the spring, her child on her back grew heavy. She turned around to look at it, but it was no longer her baby. Where her child once was a grotesque demon creature that resembles nothing from this planet. She panicked and threw the demon thing into the water she was nearby. At that point, she thought that her baby was dead, that she had inadvertently killed her child by throwing that possessive demon into the water below. But when she returned home, she found her child happy and healthy with its ailment cured. So in all honesty, I don't really understand how this demon operates. How is it possible for her baby to have been with her, then change into a demon, but then reappear with no demon at her home? It's possible that maybe this demon creature can assume the form of newborn children, and that's what happened here. Maybe the creature assumed the form of her child, tricked her into bringing it with her on her journey, but before it could attack, was found out. Comment down below your thoughts on the changeling and how it actually operates. Moral of the story though, if your kid turns into a grotesque beast thing, then there's probably something wrong with it. Number 2 on this list is Lorelei. Lorelei isn't your typical scary looking dark demon. This creature is far more cunning and hides her hand for as long as possible before she strikes. Culture Trip says, according to German folklore, atop a steep rock on the Rhine River there once lived an exquisite nymph named Lorelei. She dressed in white and wore a wreath of stars in her hair. Not only was her physical beauty astounding, but the siren sang a song so haunting and hypnotizing that no sailor could resist her aura. Enticed by her song, legend has it that no sailor who tried to reach Lorelei ever returned. Instead, they would meet their final fate by crashing against the dangerous rocks. Today, a statue of Lorelei watches over the treacherous stretch of water near Sankt Gorhausen. So many lives have been lost to this alluring call that Lorelei makes. Why she is doing this, what caused her to be there, or if she even is an actual demon are all questions that we don't know. I tend to think that anybody who sings to people hypnotizing them and then murdering them falls into the demon category though, but I truthfully don't know her exact origins. It's also hard to get an exact description of what she looks like as nobody has really been able to see her up close and lived. Just know that if you hear some mysterious melodic singing when you're in Germany, don't go near it. And finally, number 1 on this list is the marksman demon. This is one of the most famous stories in German folklore and involves the literal devil himself. Fluent U writes, a master marksman finds himself unable to catch any wild swine or deer in the dark autumn forests. One day, he's approached by a mysterious peddler wrapped in a cloak that conceals his face. The peddler offers the marksman 7 bullets with one condition. The first 6 bullets will hit whatever the marksman wants them to hit, but the peddler will choose the trajectory of the 7th. The marksman agrees. The marksman quickly earns himself a reputation as the best hunter in the village as he brings home wild boar after wild boar. He catches the eye of the prettiest girl in town and they fall in love. But all too soon, the marksman uses up all his 6 bullets, and when he shoots the 7th, it goes astray and hits his love in the chest, killing her. The peddler appears to the distraught marksman and reveals himself as the devil. Live a pious life, repent of your hubris, secrets, and you will be reunited with the girl after your death, the devil tells the marksman. The marksman tries, but he is overcome by desire for another girl in the village, and he marries her instead. 1 year to the day after his bullet pierced his original lover's chest, he is riding in the forest when he comes across a clearing where skeletons dance around cold flames. One of the skeletons, the girl's, waltzes with him all night, and the next morning the villagers find the marksman and his horse dead at the edge of the forest. I'm not sure what my guy was thinking by accepting those initial 6 bullets, guys. Also, how on earth could he think it would be a good idea to use them on deer? Like, you'd think that if you got a bunch of magical bullets that will hit literally any target, you save that stuff for things like demons or even the devil himself. Or just shoot 5 of your 6 magical bullets and then you never need to fire the 7th deadly one. I don't know, guys, I feel bad that the devil decided to pick on him, but I think that my dude could have played his cards a little bit differently in this one. 5 on this list is La Madremonte. According to myths and legends of Colombia, La Madremonte is a legend in which a woman who wears moss, leaves, and a green hat that conceals her face. She lives in the dense jungle and supposedly bathes in rivers, causing flooding and heavy storms. Madremonte haunts those who steals other people's land and casts plagues on cattle owners who ignore boundaries and take advantage of others. She also dislikes unfaithful spouses, vagabonds, and general mischief makers and punishes them by placing insurmountable obstacles in their path when they walk through the jungle. They eventually fall asleep with exhaustion and do not wake for hours. I think what's especially dangerous about this demon is her ability to control the weather the way that she does. It's said that even if you happen to be walking throughout the jungle or forested areas and you happen to get close to where she lives, then she'll use her powers to change the weather and make it extremely dangerous for you. This has caused some people to die before and wrecked even people's homes. For the most part, she'll target people who have wronged somebody else before, and even though this isn't right, it at least means that you can protect yourself by not wronging somebody else. However, to just be walking and accidentally run into her home and then get swept up in a horrible lightning storm definitely isn't cool. Be very careful of this demon witch in the woods if you happen to be around the area. Number 4 on this list is El Chupacabra. One of the most famous urban legends in the area, El Chupacabra is probably one that you've heard of before. Now, this demonic creature is most commonly associated with Puerto Rico. It has, as time gone on, been spotted more and more frequently in parts of South America though, like Chile. Wikipedia says, the Chupacabra or Chupacabras, literally goat sucker from Spanish, chupa to suck and cabras goats, is a legendary creature in the folklore of parts of the Americas, with its first purported sightings reported in Puerto Rico in 1995. The name comes from the animal's reported vampirism. The Chupacabra is said to attack and drink the blood of livestock, including goats. Physical descriptions of the creature vary, with some describing it as more dog-like, while others describe it as a reptilian and alien-like thing. Some report it as being a heavy creature the size of a small bear with a row of spines reaching from the neck to the base of the tail. Now, after some extensive research on this creature, I couldn't actually find any reported attacks on humans. So it seems that this bloodthirsty villain is truly only interested in animals. That being said, there were some instances where people had seen this creature, tried to stop it, and it looked as if it was preparing to attack them. Like most vicious animals, it's probably most interested in its food, but it's gonna defend itself to the last ounce of its energy if it has to. Therefore, El Chupacabra is truly only super dangerous to farmers of livestock. If you happen to be a farmer of said livestock, then having some sort of mechanism to keep out this vampiric demon lizard is of critical importance, or else it will completely decimate your animals. It's definitely better that you invest in some serious fencing, because trying to stop it by yourself, it could prove very dangerous. Number 3 on this list is the Encantados. The Encantados are a group of multiple demon creatures that reside underwater. They are extremely dangerous and have reportedly been responsible for several human disappearances. The thing about Encantados is that they're very curious about humans, and you may have no idea that you're dealing with one for a long time. Mental Floss says the Encantado is a dolphin, but one with evil powers. Encantado means enchanted one in Portuguese and refers to a special kind of boto or long-beaked river dolphin native to the Amazon that can take human form. Encantados are curious about humans and are especially attracted to big, noisy festivals which they often attend as musicians staying in human form for years. How can you recognize one? Look under its hat. They always have bald spots that are actually disguised blowholes. Encantados are usually friendly, but they occasionally hypnotize and kidnap young women and take them back to the Encante, their underground city. Sometimes the women escape and return pregnant with an Encantado baby. So they seem really nice and good right up until they decide to kidnap you and take you to their underground city where any number of things could happen. Most of the people who are taken there never return, and as they said, the ones that do have another passenger coming along for the ride. The origin of Encantados are not 100% confirmed, but it seems that many people think that it was a small village that was cursed to live underwater for a long time. Now they reside there except for the few times that they take the surface disguised as humans to see what we're up to and to take a few of us back to their evil lair. Number 2 on this list is El Cebon. El Cebon, also known as the Whistler, is a demon that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. This is a mistake though, and frankly we need to be talking and educating more about this demon and how dangerous it can be. The Spanish language blog says, according to a legend often told in the rural parts of Venezuela, El Cebon is the last soul of a young man who one day killed his own father in revenge because he murdered his son's girlfriend as he didn't approve of their relationship. After he killed his father, the young man's grandfather took it upon himself to punish him by tying him to a tree and beating him with a whip until he bled. Then he condemned him to carry his father's remains in a sack on his back. As the boy walked away into the plains, his grandfather yelled at him, "You shall not do that to your father, you are damned for all eternity," and then set his rabid dogs after him. It's said that the boy's spirit brings death and destruction to anyone who comes across him. His ghost is described as an extremely tall and skinny man who wears a farming hat and whistles the notes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. He's very tricky while deceiving his victims. When his whistling is heard up close, he's actually far away, but when he's heard from afar, you better start running because he's actually nearby. So first off, that initial family is freaking messed up, dude. Your dad kills your girlfriend, so then you kill your dad, but then your grandfather beats you, forces you to carry around your dead dad, and then sends dogs after you. Like, what the heck? Aside from the family being absolutely bonkers, this demon is also kinda nuts as well. I get serious Batman Joker vibes from the creepy whistle that he does there to indicate that he's coming to get his victims. The way he kills his victims is said to be very graphic as well, and he won't have you die slowly. It will be a long and drawn out process of torture that will have you begging for death. Nobody really knows how to defend yourself against this demon either. Fighting it one-on-one just simply won't work and you're gonna lose. You just need to pay very close attention to the whistle, and if you do ever hear it, don't second guess anything, just take off and don't look back. Hope that he loses interest in you and moves on to something else. Just a terrifying demon who you need to avoid at all costs. And finally, number 1 on this list is Saint La Merte. So Saint La Merte is one of the most famous on this list, and I can promise you that you definitely do not want to run into this one. Saint La Merte is your typical personification of death in South America. It is a male figure that's dressed in a hooded cloak holding a very sharp and very menacing scythe that is sometimes referred to as Saint Death. Saint Death, or just death if you will, brings one thing alone, and it's not a welcome gift. No, as you would expect, it's death. And this demonic personification of death is said to be pretty inherently evil as well. There are many followers that look up to Saint Death and praise him. The biggest following for him is in Argentina and the countries surrounding Argentina. Saint Death is said to reward his followers by helping them on their evil ventures. Let's say that you're a dangerous murderer, but you're also a strong supporter of Saint Death. Well, if Saint Death likes you, then he'll use his powers that he has to have you evade the law or even assist you in killing people. He grants numerous requests that are all connected to crime and violence and is basically the guardian angel for the evil criminals of the world. Sen la Muerte also acknowledges those who do not devote a part of their lives to him, and it's not the type of acknowledgement that you'd want. He will often kill those who disrespect him and don't support him. This is part of the reason why he has such a strong and stable following, and many people are constantly praising him and his abilities. If you ever see this demon confront you, then there's most likely nothing you can do at all. That will be the last thing that you ever see and your last moment ever spent on Earth. Number 5 on this list is Father Urbain Grandier. Father Urbain Grandier was born in 1590 in France and lived until 1634. He became a priest in the town of Loudun in 1617 and was a priest right up until he was burned at the stake in 1634. That's right guys, Father Urbain Grandier's story takes an ugly turn when he's linked to making some serious deals with the devil. Urbain had some negative rumors start to circulate around him in 1629 when he was being accused of sleeping around with a lot of women. It was even thought that he was the father to a son of a married woman, however that was never 100% proven. The slander surrounding his name reached an all-time high when in 1632 allegations of demonic possession started to form. A group of nuns began having very strange and vivid dreams with Urbain appearing in them. They also started acting very funny and not feeling like themselves. It all started with Mother Superior Jeanne d'Agnes. It's written that, unfortunately for the tortured nun, no amount of penance kept her dreams at bay, and soon the other nuns followed in her footsteps. This plague of nightmares swept its way through all of these nuns, and they all reported having Urbain in their dreams. The nuns started to fling accusations at Father Urbain Grandier and said that he'd gotten a demon to possess them. The demon that most people link to this possession is Asmodeus, who's a prince of demons, a demon that represents lust. That being said, a bunch of other demons were tied to this possession as well. Zabalon, Iscaron, Astaroth, Greciel, Amand, the list goes on and on about the possible demon or demons that Father Urbain Grandier sent down to haunt these nuns. Considering his character was already getting called into question, it wasn't difficult for people to believe that he'd called upon Asmodeus to do his evil bidding. A trial took place following the reports, but the verdict of guilt was swift, and after some extensive torture, Father Urbain Grandier was put to death by being burned at the stake for making dealings with the devil. Number 4 on this list is from a Reddit user called McCallum. They tell a very interesting story of how their friend got possessed by a demon in a newly purchased house and the ramifications of that. I think they do a good job telling this story, so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to quote their post. When I was in high school, my friend moved into a farmhouse. That house had a barn and a basement with stairs that led to nowhere. The previous owner killed himself in the barn because, and they put this in quotations here, the resident told me to. When moving into this house, my friend would never step into the barn. Not once would she even walk towards it. We thought it would be fun to have a seance because we were young and stupid. We had the candles and everything. I was sitting next to Katie, the one who lived there, and all of a sudden, when asking if whoever was there could show themselves, Katie then squeezed my hand so hard. The candlelight wavered and she turned her head so slow to meet my eyes. What she said I will never forget. "Let's go to the barn. Someone's there who wants to talk to us." I let go of her hand and stood up. My other friends there turned on the lights and she blinked at us. What happened? To this day, she can't remember that night. A week after our seance, her dad was found in that barn. He shot himself, and in his letter he said, "I'm sorry, I had to listen," as if something had told him to do it. This is a true story. It could have been coincidences back to back, but it will always scare me. So that's a really interesting story, and it reminded me of a tale that we talked about on this channel previously. In Scotland, many centuries ago, the settlers of the area defied a witch by taking over her land and not upholding the bargain that they'd struck with her. They eventually went on to kill her. This caused this witch to haunt the area, and most specifically the barn that was there. Now, we don't know where this place was, and I would find it an overwhelming coincidence if this happened to be the same Scottish barn, but I wouldn't be surprised if a similar story is what caused a demon to haunt this place. Sadly, I couldn't find out exactly who the demon was in the place the Reddit user described, but it's possible that it has been there for hundreds of years, preying on anyone who enters its lair. Number 3 on this list is the demon Dagon. This demon was prevalent in possessing people during what we call now the Louveniers possessions. This was a series of demonic possessions that occurred at the Louveniers convent in 1647. In this instance, 18 separate individuals claimed that they had been possessed by a demon. This all started with 18-year-old sister Madeleine Bavent. She was the first victim of these demonic possessions and was the first one to come forward about her story. Up until that point, her life had been very hard and she was often mistreated growing up. If what she claims was actually true, then that mistreatment carried over into her adulthood as well. Father Thomas Boule was the current leader of the convent and succeeded Father Mathurin Picard for the title. Father Mathurin Picard had died earlier that year. However, it was said that both men were responsible for having demons possess these nuns, with Father Picard's spirit being present during the proceedings. It was reported that these two men took Sister Madeleine Bavent to a witch's sabbat, and when they were there, married her to the devil and had him perform sexual acts with her. This was accompanied by the disembowelment and murder of two other men that were present at this ritual. Madeleine referred to the devil as Dagon and said that that was the name that he had given to himself. After Madeleine came forth, so did a bunch of other nuns as well. The count finally got up to 18 of them who had come forward, and they all told a similar tale. There were also reports of these nuns speaking in tongues, contorting their bodies, and levitating, just as somebody might if they were possessed by a demon. Public exorcisms were held, and the entire town showed up to watch as these nuns were exorcised of the demons that had been forced upon them. Father Thomas Boule was in the thick of it now, and there was nothing to save him from being burnt at the stake. However, it's also interesting to note that Madeleine Bavent was also sent to the dungeons to live out the rest of her days. I'm not really sure the logic behind that decision, considering she was the victim of Father Thomas Boule and also the demon Dagon, but I guess they did things differently back then. Number 2 on this list is the demon Riga. This story comes from another Reddit user. They say that they don't remember any of it, but this happened to them when they were only 2 years old. Apparently one evening this person, when they were only 2, was lying awake in bed and they started screaming at the top of their lungs. Now this isn't completely uncommon for a 2-year-old to do, but what happens next is, I'm going to quote their post here as they say, "I got off the bed and started running in circles while screaming and crying in terror. It was not a nightmare since I was awake, and I was not playing nor demanding anything since I was just scared out of my mind. Nothing like this had ever happened before. I was the only child in the house. This went on for some random time at night and until dawn. It would only stop at dawn. I did this every single night, non-stop, for 6 months." End quote. Now that is definitely a strange thing for a 2-year-old to be doing, and quite demonic if you ask me. The parents knew that this was a big problem. Their child would claw and bite at them whenever they tried to calm him, and they weren't sure how to handle it. Eventually they decided that going to a priest was the right thing to do, but even they couldn't find the answer. They apparently visited as many priests as they could, but still the problem persisted. That was right up until one priest, while performing a ritual on this child, managed to extract some information. It turns out that our Reddit user was possessed by a demon, and that demon's name was Riga. They couldn't get a whole lot more information, however they did learn that Riga was an inhabitant of not only the child, but also the home. The parents understood exactly what this meant, and wasting no time at all, they moved houses. This clearly was the problem, because the second that they got to a new residence, the demonic possession, Riga, ceased, and their baby, our Reddit user, was calm. Sometimes these demons will only possess us for a time, and when they get what they want, which in this case was for these people to leave their house, then they'll also leave. Number 1 on this list is the demon Balberith. This demon was rampant in possessing people in the Aon province possessions. Similar to some of the other cases that we've looked at today, this pandemic of possessions made its way through a convent of nuns. Clearly, these nuns really had it rough during the early 17th century. The first report to come out came from Madeleine de Demandolx. She was an aristocrat who joined the Ursuline convent at Marseille in 1607. It wasn't long before she'd reported to the Mother Superior that she actually had an affair with Father Louis Goffardy, who was also at that convent. The Mother Superior was obviously shocked at this news and thought it best to remove Madeleine and send her to Ai. This was to get her away from Father Goffardy and distance her from the scandal. It was when she got to her new location though that she started to notice the symptoms of demonic possession. In 1609, Madeleine started to exhibit all of our classic telltale signs. This included convulsions, foaming at the mouth, speaking devilish languages, reacting strangely to religious paraphernalia. These symptoms spread like a disease to all of the other nuns that were close to Madeleine, and similarly to my other entries on this list, you immediately had a bunch of nuns that were now demonically possessed. These nuns were hit hard with these demonic possessions as well, with a lot of them speaking a voice that wasn't their own. The church responded swiftly and started performing exorcisms as best as they could. Most attempts though were unsuccessful. successful. However, it was during one of these exorcisms in 1910 that Father Goffredy's name was thrown into the mix. Madeleine claimed that he seduced her and brought her to a demonic ritual. This ritual was used to summon the demon Balberith, which then possessed Madeleine. Other nuns started to make the same claim, and soon Father Goffredy's name was completely run through the dirt. During a session of torture, he confessed to the crimes and was sentenced to death. This case of a demon possessing a group of nuns was the first one in France and set the precedent for the other two that I've previously spoken about.
Coming in at number 5, we have Shadow Dog. One Reddit user told the story of a contact she had with a demon when she was younger. Her parents had just divorced when she was a teenager. She decided that she would live with her mother in her new home. As soon as she moved in, she started to experience some paranormal activity. It started small. She'd be reading her books on her bed when she suddenly felt an icy chill take over her. Then she would feel like she was being watched by an entity that hated her, but obviously there was no one else in the room. She said when she felt this, she would leave her house and go for a walk for more than an hour. Usually by this time the feeling had passed. She then started to see shadows behind her, like there was someone stood in the room with her. This started to get worse when she would see the shadows move around her bedroom walls. They were getting bolder in their contact with her. The demon then started to imitate their family dog. She thinks this might have been a way to trick her into making a physical connection with the demon, allowing it to take full possession. The demon would make a growling noise from under her bed, like her dog was in need of help. The dog had refused to enter the room for months at this point, so she was not fooled by the demon. After this, she could not stay there anymore, with the demon becoming bolder and increasingly active. She moved in with her father and she never experienced anything paranormal again. I do appreciate that she was like, screw you mum, I'm leaving, you stay with the dog in this haunted house. Her mother's probably gone now, R.I.P. Demon got her. In at number 4 we have texting the devil. Demons could choose any form of communication with the living. They are not bound by our laws of reality. Sometimes they choose possession, others will only talk through a medium or Ouija board, but still one priest claims he is being contacted by a demon via text messages. Father Marian Rachel, a priest from Poland, claims that a demon from a failed exorcism is now harassing him. He attempted to perform the exorcism on a teenage girl but unfortunately was unsuccessful. He believed the devil is using this teenage girl to mock his failed attempt via these text messages. One of the messages that he received from the demon was, I quote, "She will not come out of this hell. She's mine. Anyone who prays for her will perish." The priest responded to this that the young girl is clearly still possessed and needs further help. The Catholic Church took this extremely seriously. Although there were some doubters, the majority of the community was extremely concerned about this young girl and her behavior since the possession began. The family of the girl cooperated fully with the church to try and save their sick daughter. They brought her back in for a second exorcism. This one seems to have been successful as far as they're aware. The priest did comment that he received a threatening message after the girl was saved from the demon. They threatened that the two would meet again and he would not be able to save himself next time. The priest, however, remains confident he has rid the world of this demon. He was calm and confident about the whole thing. I don't think I would enjoy texting with the devil. To be honest, I think it's probably the girl playing a little Halloween trick. Coming in at number 3 we have Dark Letter. Back when letter writing was still a thing that was commonly done, it was used by demons to leave messages with the living. Over 300 years ago in Sicily at the convent at Parma di Montechiero, a nun named Sister Maria Crocifissa claimed that she had been possessed by the devil. The story of what happened to her has finally been told and her letter has finally been translated. The story is told that one morning in 1676, Sister Maria woke up and found herself covered in ink. She had no memory of it but had spent the night writing letters. Others in the convent had heard disturbances from her room during the night. Some had heard screaming. One said they heard a thud as if she was fainting and hit the floor. Maria had lived at the convent since she was 15 years old. She was devoted to them and had never showed signs of possession or doubt before this incident. The letters explained that Maria was writing on behalf of the devil. He was dictating the words she wrote. The letter said it was Lucifer's plan to possess Maria and turn her against God so she could serve evil. A lot of the letters were coded in hidden messages of symbols and shapes and they had no way to translate it at the time. Today, some of the letters are still intact and the Ludum Science Center in Italy attempted to finally decode a portion of the text. The software is reportedly used by intelligence agencies for code breaking. They gave the machine the understanding of Greek, Arabic, the runic alphabet, and Latin. translation. This revealed that the text really was devilish. It described God as a dead weight. It went on to say God could not free mortals from their fate. There is also a reference made within the writing to the river Styx, which in Greek mythology is said to separate the realm of the living from the underworld. The church was trying to disprove that the nun was ever possessed. If anything, decoding the letter proved the opposite. Maria seems to have been very lucky that the possession didn't go further. In at number 2 we have Singapore Doll. We all know that demons have an attachment to creepy dolls. There are so many stories of dolls coming to life and terrorizing families. For one unlucky neighborhood in Singapore, an old doll appeared and started to terrorize those who took it home. One Twitter user told the story to her followers as a warning. The doll first appeared leaning against a tree on a busy residential street. The doll was small and looked like an antique. Her arms were bound to her body with string, and she had a cloth across her eyes with Arabic text written across it. The girl brought the doll home and unbound her while also removing her blindfold. She said not long after bringing the doll home, she noticed that it would move around the home when left alone. She also said that she would hear it talking to itself when she left the room. It was clear to her that the doll was possessed. It soon made sense why it was bound when she found it. Although she did not know the doll's backstory, it seems the previous owner has a similar experience. She threw the doll away hoping to stop the demon from being in her home. However, when she returned, the doll was back home. It knew how to return to her home and was refusing to leave. She decided to try and bind the doll as she found it. She drove far away from her home and left the doll. Seems that the doll had been continuing this cycle. When you find and untie the doll, the demon and curse transfers to you. The owner saw someone post about finding the doll after she had left it. She saw that it had been untied and posted, "We bind it for a reason, stupid people, unbind it. It looks unhappy. Good luck to whoever did it." Her account has since been deleted, so she couldn't be tracked down for questions or for them to attempt to return the doll. The doll's current location is unknown, but its existence is now well known in the area. There have been discussions and crimes happening in the locations where the doll has been seen. Crimes that have never happened in these areas. The doll seems to communicate with other demons while alone and then whispers to its new owner when given the chance. Some suggested the doll be burned or crushed, but it is unclear if this would work. Surely someone has already tried this at some point. And finally, in at number 1 we have imaginary friend. Sometimes children have imaginary friends and we don't think anything of it, but what if their friend isn't so imaginary? One little girl from Texas named Madison had many imaginary friends when she was younger. All of her imaginary friends came as a pair. When she was 3 years old, she started to talk about a new friend. Her mother, Kelly, found this strange as this friend came around by themselves. Her new friend was called Kellum. She described him as a man around the age of 40. She said she saw him as a father figure. She started to spend a lot of her time playing with him rather than her other imaginary friends. She would build her blocks into a tower and knock them over as it made him laugh. The mother was keeping an eye on her with this latest friend but was not concerned until she started to sing an old song. At the time she didn't know how old the song was. Madison would sing the song all of the time. Her mother asked the nanny where the song is from, thinking she taught her it. She wanted to sing it with her to develop her language skills, but the nanny had never heard the song before. She had no idea where it was from. They looked into it everywhere until they finally found it online and realized it was an old song. It was released in 1892. No one in their life would be familiar with this song. She asked Madison who taught her the song. She said Kellum taught her. He sings it to his child. This shocked Kelly. This imaginary friend has an imaginary baby and he is teaching her real songs. She could not find an explanation for it. Things quickly began to get worse. Maybe Kellum had been watching Kelly figuring out he is more than an imaginary friend, but maybe he was an entity communicating with her daughter. One night Madison woke up screaming. When she was older, she told the story that Kellum was grabbing onto her arm, pulling on her. He was getting angry and frustrated that she did not want to stay up and play. She kicked him away and tried to flee the room. She was screaming as she tried to climb the baby gate. Kelly was woken up by the screaming and ran and grabbed Madison as she cried for help. Kelly looked back to the room where the curtains were blowing like there was a great wind in the room, but the windows were all closed. They fled their home. Safely relocated at their friend's home, Kelly called her stepfather, who was a pastor. He did not believe in demons, and if she had come to him sooner, the community might have labeled her a sinner for inviting this entity into her home, but she was desperate. Her stepfather told her to stay away from the home till he was done. He called her the next morning saying it was safe to return. When she got home, holy oil had been used all over the house to protect protect them. They both said it felt peaceful when they re-entered their home. Madison never saw any of her imaginary friends again. Now she is older and able to reflect on it. She feels the demon was talking to her, telling her stories, and attempting to get her to behave badly.
Number 5 on this list is the Jersey Devil, and no, I'm not referencing the hockey team, the New Jersey Devils. I'm actually talking about the winged beast that soars the skies in that area. The Jersey Devil is described as being a massive kangaroo-like creature with hooves as feet, a goat's head, and demon wings. It also has a tail that is very similar to that of the devil. It is very fast and can be distinguished by its extremely loud pterodactyl-like scream. The whole legend of the Jersey Devil has some old origins. The story begins in the 17th century when a mother, who some claim to be a witch, was having her 13th child. In some versions of the story, she cursed this child since she didn't want a 13th kid. But in others, it just contracted the abilities that it has today because she was a witch and had a pact with the devil. One thing that remains consistent though is that she had this child and then after it was born, transformed into the creature that I just described and flew out of the home and into some nearby woods. This devil has lived in the woods of Jersey ever since, and it's been cited quite a few times over the years. Many livestock deaths have been linked to the Jersey Devil, with the carcasses of these animals being completely mauled in an unknown way. One story depicts how somebody in the 1800s fired a cannonball at this creature and it literally had no effect at all. In January of 1909, the legend reached a new height when there was a wave of sightings from various different people all in the same region. It got so big in the media that the Philadelphia Zoo even offered a reward of $10,000, which when I used an inflation calculator would have been worth $300,000 today. Now this could simply be a manifestation of people's imaginations, but with the incredible number of stories related to this demon, with the fact that a zoo was willing to fork over a small fortune for this thing, I actually think that it might be real. Number 4 on this list is the Dover Demon. The Dover Demon is an urban legend that is based out of Dover, Massachusetts, and has gained a lot of traction throughout the years. Back in 1977, the Dover Demon had its first sighting by a 17-year-old named William Bartlett. William claimed that he saw this strange creature when he was driving home on April 21st. And we described this creature as having super large eyes, long tendril-like fingers, a massive head, and spindly limbs. He said that he saw this strange demon sitting on top of a broken stone wall, staring down at him. When he reported it to the police, he had to make a drawing of the creature, and after looking at it, I personally got some very serious amphibian vibes. What's super interesting about this story though is that the next night, on April 22nd, somebody else reported seeing this creature as well. This was a 15-year-old named John Baxter, and he said that he saw the creature on Miller Road in the same town. And then what gets even crazier is that the following day, another 15-year-old named Abby Brabham said that she saw this being on Springdale Avenue in the same town. The police made all of them draw pictures of this creature, and all of them were eerily similar to each other. Now since then there hasn't been much rumblings about the Dover Demon, so let's just break this down a little bit. We have a weird amphibian looking creature that had reportedly only been seen in a 3-day time frame. Now to me, this screams one of two things. Number 1, it's a few teenagers, they're pulling off a prank on the town, they want to have a little fun. Okay, that's possible. Or number 2, maybe it's aliens. An alien comes to Earth, investigates a little bit, and then after investigating, leaves and has never been seen again. Personally, aliens are something that I can actually get behind, and the narrative to me in this instance would actually make a lot of sense. Again guys, it could totally be a bunch of teenagers making something up about a demon, or maybe it could be aliens. Let me know in the comments guys, who you got, teenagers or aliens? What's your money on? Number 3 on this list is the New Hampshire Woods Devil. Now first thing about this creature is that it may not be a singular being, but actually an entire species in itself. The Woods Devil, or devils, are found in the deep forests of New Hampshire. These are very sizable creatures ranging from roughly 7 to 9 feet in height and are also very hairy. Now when I was first reading this, I'm gonna be completely honest, I was like, alright, 7 to 9 feet, super hairy. Well, that's just a bear, nothing demonic here. But where they differ from bears is just how thin they are for their height. They're said to be rather lanky creatures with really long fingers and fingernails. Sightings of these beasts have been going on for quite a while as well, with reports going back almost 100 years all the way to the 1930s. Now, for a long period of time, people thought that they were dealing with Bigfoot in regards to these creatures. However, it is now believed that they are either a descendant of Bigfoot or a subspecies. Their hair is really notable as well because it's actually gray. This allows them to blend into their environment extremely well and camouflage themselves from predators or hunters. This also works extremely well with their temperament because it's believed that these wood devils are pretty calm creatures. People have reported running into them before, but I couldn't find any explicit reports of these beings attacking humans or hunting humans down like some other demons. In fact, for the most part, people have said that they've watched these creatures hide from them by camouflaging themselves up against a tree or simply just running away entirely. It feels like these wood devils actually have a decent amount of validity to them based on the amount of sightings that have happened over the years. Now, this entry made it into the video because they are literally called the wood devils, but personally I think that we need to change that. How do we know that these timid creatures aren't just another animal that we've discovered in the woods? Why have we connected them to the demon world? Personally, I'm super interested to see how the story of these wood devils develop as more sightings and more information comes to light. Number 2 on this list is Kuchisake Onna. Kuchisake Onna is a Japanese legend that depicts a girl who is rather beautiful but has deep slits on the sides of her mouth. Her appearance is actually very similar to that of the Joker in Batman, with cuts on either side. The reason that I'm saying that she might be real is just how deeply rooted she is in Japanese culture, with practically the whole country aware and likely afraid of Kuchisake Onna. The legend of this demon has been told over centuries and is always the same story. This girl will appear with a face mask on or some other thing that's covering her mouth. She will then ask you, "Do you think I'm beautiful?" Most of the time, the person being asked would respond with a resounding yes. She would then pull off the mask and ask the question again. Any hesitation, any wavering on your part not to once again repeat that resounding yes would result in her slitting your mouth open like hers and then killing you on the spot. If you search her up on the internet, there are hundreds of stories of sightings, theories on how to survive her, just general explanations talking about her origins. It's for this reason that I honestly think that she might be real, or at least a portion of the story has to be. This level of mass hysteria, it doesn't come from thin air. Could I believe that maybe a woman who had scars on her face or her mouth killed somebody, and then that story got exaggerated to the point that we have it today? Maybe. But the point that I'm trying to make is that she might just be real based on the amount of lore that surrounds her. Obviously, we can't be sure, but if a woman ever approaches you asking if she's pretty, the answer, it's always yes. Number 1 on this list is Vampire Mercy Brown. Vampire Mercy Brown is a 100% true story that occurred in the later 1800s about a demonic vampire. George Brown was a family man. He had a wife, a few kids. Sadly, George's entire family started to drop in a matter of months. First, it started with his wife Mary, then a few months later his daughter Olive, then his daughter Mercy, and then his teenage son Edwin. What would happen is they would just become immediately frail and sick and then die, and nobody could explain why this was happening. The townsfolk though started to believe that something supernatural was afoot here and decided that they were going to go and check the bodies of these dead people in their graves. When they did, they discovered something that really shook them to their core. George's one daughter Mercy had been underground at this point for roughly 2.5 to 3 months. When they opened up her grave though, she didn't look like she'd been there for more than a day. Her hair looked luscious, her fingernails had grown, she looked like she had fresh blood flowing through her veins. This discovery confirmed what the townsfolk had suspected though. They believed that George's family was being targeted by a demonic vampire and were slowly being killed off by it. When they discovered Mercy in the state that she was, it was clear that she had been turned and now she was operating as a vampire and waking up at night to feast on the blood of the living. They quickly took Mercy and cut open her chest and burned her heart so that her demon spirit was dead for good and gone from the world of the living. However, they never were able to find the initial vampire that was causing this problem in the first place. The discovery of her body as it was is all completely true as well, with no one being able to have a proper explanation for how she could possibly be kept in that condition. The only logical answer was that Mercy Brown was an undead vampire, and if the townsfolk wanted to stay alive, they had to put her to rest for good.
Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodeus. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodeus, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodeus killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodeus would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodeus is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodeus for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abasathebu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abasathebu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell, too. See, Abasathebu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abasathebu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abasathebu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abasathebu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abasathebu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abasathebu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon. and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey, do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebos. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him.